Hey, everybody, it's Saturday. I know it's not Friday, and we are back with another episode of the 6-5 podcast. It's Saturday morning, like I said. Yep. You can check your watch, check your calendar, check your time. It's because I was on the road yesterday, but it wasn't for a 6-5. I was on the road with my amazing middle daughter. Well, she's actually my middle child. She's my second daughter. Up at the BU, not Boston. Sorry, Northerners. This is the real BU, the one that wins national championships in basketball. Baylor University, although not this year, Pat. And I forced you to have to wait till Saturday to do the pod. So thank you so much for being flexible with me. And thank you, everybody out there, for waiting for us. But Pat, how you doing this morning? By the way, I'm going to lose the hat because everybody wants to see my beautiful head. And I kind of look like a gangster with that hat on because it's like one of those youthful hats that everyone wears, but my daughter said it looks way cooler on you than those old man dad hats with the straps in the back.
Yeah, Dan, I missed your forehead the last 2 minutes you've been talking, but
it was only a minute. It was only a minute.
Yeah, I mean, whether we do this at Friday morning, Saturday morning, I mean, we're actually ahead of schedule if you bump us a day. I'm kind of a glass half full guy. Just the fact we're doing this on a Saturday, I just know people appreciate that.
Well, dude, listen, I mean, sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the people you love. And so there's many people I love involved in the 6-5. And first and foremost, it's you, my bestie, the one I love the most in my business world. Make sure we cut that out correctly because that could be taken out of context. But we got a good show. It's been kind of an interesting week, Pat. It wasn't a huge news week. There's not any earnings this week that really we felt the need to speak of. There's a lot going on out there. It's been a weird sort of week in the economy. The market sort of took a dump this week. And then we got this really, really robust economic data on jobs, which is really weird because all the created jobs were basically part-time. California went to $20 an hour wages for fast food workers. And now all the fast food franchisees are firing people and laying people off like crazy. And Pat, I feel a little bit like, if I can just do a 20-second rant, I feel a little duped because, these jobs numbers keep coming out. And then I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's this revision thing that keeps happening. So we come out with these great job numbers and then like a month or two later, we come out with a revision and it turns out they're not such great numbers. Can you imagine if, because you and I, we're not economists, but we talk about this a lot. Can you imagine if you and I were reporting our company or if the tech industry, like NVIDIA comes out with its numbers and they're like, oh, we had this massive billions of dollars of growth. And they come out 30 days later and they're like, just kidding. We didn't grow at all. We actually shrunk this quarter. But no, only in government, only in agencies can we report that way.
Dan, yeah, the jobs numbers look fishy. And after whiffing it, I don't know, it's just the sixth downward revision. I mean, it is getting close to the election, and it's kind of funny how that happened.
Well, I read it was only 6,000 negative full-time jobs, so it's all part-time jobs, and then all the headlines are like it's great, and then we get these revisions and no one talks about them. I'm not trying to get all weird on the show because I know we're a tech show, but it was like this all these things intertwine. We talk about this, the strength of the economy, the chips, China, US, like this does impact the tech industry in a big way. So I'm reading this stuff this morning and going down the Twitter X rabbit hole of all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope people pay attention. That's all I'm going to say. I hope people are paying attention. But we got a great show today. We're going to talk. This was a really big week for Intel, and we'll talk about their new breakout of their products and Foundry business. We're going to talk about a new partnership that's going on with Oracle and Palantir. Groq made some big milestones, kind of made a business shift. I don't know if everybody saw Jonathan Ross's tweet this week. Apple ditches cars, and now they're going to build humanoid robots and put them in our house. That seems like a great plan, Tim Cook. We're going to talk a little bit about Rubrik, which filed an S1 to go public, and Pat analyzed it, and so did Gemini 1.5, and Gemini Pro did that in 1.5 seconds. So our job is screwed. And then what's going on with EVs, Pat? The Tesla numbers were poopy. And then Reuters came out with some rumors, and now what's going on with the business, and Elon was snarky as ever on Twitter. Gotta love that. Pat, so real quickly, just everybody out there, you heard we're talking about the economy. We're talking about public companies. This show is for information and entertainment purposes only. And while we will be talking about publicly traded companies, Please don't take anything we say as investment advice. Pat, I think our biggest, longest, most in-depth topic of the day is going to be our first topic. It's our mega topic. It's Intel. They've made a big shift. They had a big announcement this week. What did they talk about?
Yeah, so a little background here. Intel is what is called an IDM, an integrated device manufacturer. And what that means is it designs parts and it builds parts. And a few years back when Pat Gelsinger announced that he was coming back, and before that, there was a lot of discussion about, will Intel stay in the chip building business, right? There was a lot of people who said split it. That would be the best route. Just outsource everything to companies like TSMC and Samsung. I thought short term that was a laughable idea, because if you're not using common tools, and there's weakness on the design side, then you're going to have some big issues. We saw what happened to Global Foundries when AMD spun off, and the second that AMD was able to better deal Global Foundries and went to TSMC, and Global Foundries got out of bleeding edge. So rewind. Intel is making hundreds of billions of dollars in investments. Some of that is shared investment between private and public. And this resegmentation was to help the financial community better do comps, which is, let's separate the design and product company from the chip building and packaging company. And that would allow you to compare the Intel Foundry to companies like TSMC and Global Foundries, and the design company a better comparison to NVIDIA and AMD. And net, the market reaction was not positive, as demonstrated by the stock price. It was a difficult week, right? We saw the Dow go down 500 points, biggest loss in a long time. But I want to talk about kind of what happened, right? There was some sentiment that talked about, first of all, the media coverage was all about this $7 billion loss and the projected losses into the future. And that really influences the retail investors. And I think, Intel came in, they didn't reiterate guidance, which I think weighed heavily on the company. Now, the company was in the quiet period, and there was some, and whether we want to talk about it being a miscommunication or misunderstanding, that Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger walked back some previous commitments on technology and financial timelines around 18A. Okay, so I think my three key messages are factually, there were no changes to the financial commitments that I'm aware of. And the other thing I think that's important is to reinforce that the numbers and the guidance were very conservative for Intel. I mean, there's so many ways that this could be a much bigger business. I think the final thing is even breaking even has the capability to, at least what I've been reading and researching, is enabling the company to unlock an extra $200 billion in market cap just by breaking even.
Yeah, Pat. Well, listen, I'm going to make that even simpler for people out there to understand why that is the case. Long story short, Intel, because of its IDM strategy, is being assessed completely differently. And in fact, its manufacturing capabilities are being even valued at possibly negative or zero at best at this point. So if you kind of look at the new reporting structure, what they basically want to say is we have one business that looks like TSMC. We have another business that looks like AMD. Now, again, I'm really oversimplifying that because they're not the same, but they are. They have a fabless business that buys wafers at market price, just the way all these other fabless chip makers do. And then they have a foundry that's like TSMC that makes chips for other companies. It just so happens they make them for Intel as well. both those companies have value. And if they're creating cash flow, driving EBITDA, and net income, earnings per share, they both have value. But right now, they've all been locked up inside this one operating set of books. So if all of a sudden they can say, hey, look, we've got this business that creates billions and billions of dollars of income as a fabless, there's value in that. And if you look at the multiples, the forward multiples at companies, whether it's Marvell, whether it's Lattice, whether it's AMD, whether it's Qualcomm, what they're able to get versus what Intel's gotten, because Intel's been blended down and then almost given a negative valuation to the manufacturing part of its business over time. On the other end, you got a business like TSMC that's also highly valued for what it's able to offer to the market. And if they can get to break even, now what happens is you can start to value the products part of the business, and then you zero out instead of products plus some negative that's being associated with this manufacturing. So that's what's going on here. It's going to take some time. And I think the market was somewhat jolted a bit by how long it's going to take. And even though I think the company's been very forward about how long it's going to take, I don't think people fully digested it. Now that they saw just how poorly the Foundry has performed in the near term. And again, I want to be very clear. You cannot stand up a Foundry with the cost. It is so capital intensive, and get to market and start making money very quickly, especially at the leading edge. By the way, there's a reason no one's doing this. I mean, this is incredibly capital intensive. You have an entire world that is somewhat got the rug pulled over their eyes about Taiwan, in the fact that they do not see any threat to, if China was to invade or something, an earthquake, I don't know, happened in Taiwan and all of a sudden we couldn't manufacture chips. But that we really need a Western foundry that does the 7 and below at scale. And so Intel has raised its hand and should be given some commendment for what they've done, for the risk they're taking and the investment that they're making. And by 2030, what they're basically saying is this will be a revenue profit generator. Well, it is a revenue generator now, a profit generator for the company, and it can bring returns to investors. I guess the only other thing I'll say, Pat, and you hit it, you hit it pretty hard, is that, you know, I think that the market needs to give some value, but also give some runway to Intel to accomplish what they're trying to do. I also think, long and short, we're going to need a CHIPS Act too. I don't think the government's serious about, I don't think they're serious enough. I know 52 billion sounds like a lot, but I'm pretty sure there was a line item for like a zoo somewhere in Nebraska that got like 28 billion in the latest multi-trillion-dollar budget. Yes, I'm kidding. Yes, I'm being sarcastic, but we spend more than that on things that have nothing to do with us every single day. We run $1 trillion deficit a quarter in this country. We spent 52 billion on the most fundamental, critical technology that's going to shape the next multiple decades in the economy and defense and technology leadership. So get it right, U.S. government. Get it right, world. Intel is doing the right things. It is hard. This is a very hard thing to do. And I do think they're making the right steps. But if you're a short-term investor trying to get a return, I don't think this is going to be a play for a lot of them. It's going to take some time, because this business isn't going to start making money for probably at least 4 or 5 years. And
my biggest frustration, Dan, was people who really don't understand how this works. I mean, you have to lay down tens, 20, 50, $100 billion. That's 3 to 4 years before you generate a single cent in revenue, right? And as a foundry, you have to get into these perpetual nodes that last for 15 years. So yeah, it just the ignorance is frustrating.
I think it's a combination of ignorance and fast money, Pat. And I mean, like, you know, right now you can throw a buck into some meme coin and crypto and get 8,000% return, or you can put money into a company like Intel that's building fundamental technology for the world, and not only developing it, but also now manufacturing it for other companies that are building fundamental technology for the world. And it might not drive you a return, and it hasn't driven a return. I mean, that's the truth. Like, you know, you look back and people have worked there 20 years and their options are underwater. I mean, that is the problem that investors have. And so they have to unlock this value, Pat. They have to unlock it.
Dan, do you want to take this this Facebook question?
Ugh. No, I think my answer is no. I think that one is, if you've listened to Gina Raimondo and you listen to the federal government of the United States sees this technology as as fundamental, foundational, and critical. They've called it the company a national treasure. They actually can't fail. We have banks too big to fail, and we'll bail them out when they make bad bets and bad loans. This is not a bad bet. Now, the ability to execute is going to be a question for some time, Pat, but that's my take. What's yours?
Yeah, my take is similar in that. So, there would be a potential if Foundry is a massive success that it gets split off as its own company. I think that's a possibility. I'm very optimistic on what I'm seeing about 18A on the high performance computing. And by the way, that's PCs, servers, AI data center chips. I need to see some feedback on 14A from the mobile companies, because this model will not work without volume, and volume comes through mobile, not PCs.
That's a good point. Look at where ARM got its volume.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different.
It's foundry economics, right? I think, but yeah, it depends. It helps on IP, but you can't operate. And notice the plus on wafer cost on 14A. They're saying it's going to be the best. The only way they get there is to sign up an Apple or a Qualcomm.
Yeah, the packaging though, Pat, we didn't say much about it, but the packaging capabilities are robust, and they're very innovative on packaging. That's where they've been doing a lot of their winning so far. And the EDA partnerships are really only in their infancy, which is another thing that's coming. That comes at 18A, right? That's actually where they flagged that on their.
Yeah, listen, I love packaging. TSMC, high performance computing, it's 10% of their revenue. I like it. It's good for Intel, but they've got to hit it on the wafers. Wow, we did spend 15 minutes on this topic, didn't we?
No, yeah, well, no, because I did my whole little rant about blah blah at 10. I said this would be the longest one. I don't think we're going to have this much time on anything else, Pat. Let's go to the next topic. Let's talk about a new partnership that's taking place between Oracle and Palantir. The interesting thing, Pat, about Oracle and Palantir, which maybe kind of fits somewhat nicely with my early, is they are very focused on Western interests. These are two companies. Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir, has been criticized and even has seen employees leave for his outspoken support of Israel. We know we're in a very complicated global moment right now in Gaza and what's going on there. Oracle and Larry Ellison's always been very supportive to Western interests. If you remember when TikTok was originally potentially being spun off, it was Oracle that was actually potentially going to take over, move all the data into their US data centers. They obviously are very supportive on the database side. They've got massive government contracts with almost every government institution. They are the database of the US and most of the West. Of course, SAP's got a lot of Europe. That's, to be very, very clear. But, another company that talks about Foundry is Palantir, but Palantir's not talking about Foundry in the ways that, we're talking about it with data centers. They're talking about it with cloud and workloads and applications all being brought into a common, ecosystem. And so what they basically are doing is they're moving some of their quote unquote Foundry workloads to Oracle. And then they're going to make their Gotham and AI platforms deployable across Oracle's distributed cloud. I think this is really important from a security, defense, and intelligence standpoint to win those customers. Oracle has shown a lot of strength there. They've got global relationships with regionals across with other big data center companies, so they're able to offer the regionality that you need that some of the other big cloud providers offer, but also offer it within the context of Oracle's security and privacy and data commitments. The way they position themselves, Pat, is that they are the hyperscale that is basically able to do AI and cloud for government anywhere in the world. So that is how they're positioning themselves. And for those that aren't following Palantir closely, Palantir is a analytics and AI platform that basically had come to market as the platform for defense. That is their position in the market. Now, their analytics tools are very powerful and can be used for a lot of other things, Pat. but that is what they came to market. That is how they've differentiated. And I think there's been a lot of enthusiasm about the company, albeit it has been somewhat controversial. I don't know if you remember their CEO recently talking about short sellers on short selling his stock so they could buy their Coke. That's a true story, everybody. It happened. It was on CNBC. But you know what? I like controversial. I like CEOs that are willing to say what's on their mind. I like the fact that they're willing to be ambitious and aggressive. And by the way, the CEO, now the CTO and chairman of Oracle, has never been one to mince words about what he thinks about the competition and what they're doing. So basically, Pat, long and short, what you have is two companies that have long staked themselves on being very, very capable to support federal interest, defense interest, and offer their technologies to come together to give new capabilities with the defense industry in mind. But of course, it'll also be something that I think will drip into commercial. It'll drip into broader government, and it won't just be for defense. But sovereign cloud's a real thing, Pat, and this is addressing some of that sovereign cloud requirement.
Yeah, great analysis, Dan. So I want to read this paragraph that was headlined in CEO Alex Karp right after a video he did. Quote unquote, the dominant nation states and companies that define our way of life will be the ones that get software and use of data right. Getting this right is a requirement to preserve our way of life, enable society to thrive beyond a few dominant organizations, i.e. countries, end quote. So yeah, it's defense, it's government. They're getting increasingly into healthcare, National Institutes of Health as an example. I think, culture on partnerships have to work. And I believe that the culture between Oracle and Palantir is perfect. OCI Gen 1 was not good. It was uncompetitive. It was overpriced. It was bad. OCI Gen 2 is very competitive. In fact, they've got a really interesting pricing model versus AWS where Oracle prices very low for kind of entry-level base infrastructure, whereas AWS prices it higher, and AWS's add-ons are lower, where OCI's add-ons are higher priced. So it's a really interesting pricing model. I've said this before, their version of sovereign cloud and on-prem cloud is the absolute easiest to understand. It's essentially take what was in the cloud and put it on-prem, put a chain link fence around it, run every Oracle app on it, including database, and do it as a service. So, and then sovereign, right? They're very clear about locations, badged employees in that country. It's just very simple, as opposed to the other cloud providers have a little harder time explaining that. So to me, it's a good match. It's very straightforward.
Oh, all right. That one's good. Pat, by the way, I love the language. I was looking up the way Palantir describes its Foundry. It says it integrates the semantic, kinetic, and dynamic elements of your business. Woo!
Yeah.
I'm going to need to go back to college. All right, let's run down the next topic, Pat. You and I both, I think we're both investors in Groq. Let's put that up front on this. But the company has come out of its shell, and it's had in just some really explosive moments over the last couple of quarters. Got a really nice readout on the all-in, made some big acquisitions. But also, Pat, we're seeing some big milestones.
Yeah, so Chamath Palihapitiya is an investor. He rarely talks about his investments, but he's super excited about this one, and I think it's for good reason, and that is the LPU, which is essentially the chip that Groq has, is very performant versus NVIDIA GPUs. And Dan, we have debated kind of ASICs and their pluses and their minuses. And the trick with an ASIC based accelerator is if you can put a software layer, I call it the magic API, so you can get 2 to 3 generations out of your chip. NVIDIA's got a really good TCO equation, because everybody knows that you'll get, again, 2 or 3 generations of something out of the chip today and in the future. Perfect example is that GPT was trained on the predecessor to the A100, not the H100 or even the A100. So with that said, big news. They have 70,000 developers and 19,000 applications on their cloud, and their cloud is basically, this was an acquisition of Definitive IO CEO Sunny Madra. Was out there. Very quick acquisition here. But what this acquisition did, it enables, it lights up the capability for developers to go in and not just test workloads, but use them to train and infer workloads. Now, long term, right, you want to stand this up on an on-prem cloud or something, let's say in a colo at Equinix. But Dan and I, you and I are always looking for the, we know AMD with its GPU is competitive. Intel in 2025 with Falcon Shores, with a little bit of ASIC juice involved, is a next player. But which ASIC is going to make things happen, right? Intel Gaudi, LPU. So exciting stuff and exciting progress by the company.
Yeah, I think I saw Jonathan Ross share something. I don't know if it was on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'll have to find the link to it, but where he basically said we're not selling chips anymore, except to, specifically to some government defense requirements. And he's going to focus 100% on this cloud capability with with that acquisition. The company is really starting to stand up and make this, extraordinarily accessible to developers. And you saw the numbers from Sunny Madra, 70,000 developers now are developing 19,000 apps on the Groq cloud. Pat, I mean, it's an incredible bit of progress, and the need for alternatives. I understand that, that NVIDIA is an incredibly powerful company that builds great stuff. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
I just think the idea that it's zero sum, we've got this weird world where everybody thinks everything's zero sum now. It's like going to be all one or nobody. Look, AMD is going to take a part of the market with their GPUs. The cloud providers are going to build homegrown silicon that are going to be powerful and usable for certain workloads. We're going to see CPUs on Xeon. Pat, I shared something yesterday about a company that's, with AMX and Xeon, you can do a whole lot of inference on a CPU, and we will see a lot of inference being done on a CPU, Pat. And Groq has built something that's very specialized. Now, the company continues to talk about it can do more than language, but what they're doing is they're basically making it extensible. They're making it available, and they've shown that they can make it extremely performant. And so we knew that from the beginning, Pat. There was a reason that both of us felt this was investable when we got involved in it. And, we continue to cheer for it. But also, I think the market needs to pay attention. There was a time I think both of us were concerned that Groq's future was going to be challenged. But in the last few months, they've come out swinging with innovation. They seem to be refocused, repurposed, and the market is finding and identifying their technology. And we're hearing a lot more about it. And that kind of buzz is good. And by the way, frothy valuations in AI right now. I mean, look, I shared something the other day. I think one company in 8 weeks went from a $300 million round to a $2 billion valuation on the same company without creating any additional revenue. VCs are back. The froth is back. I know we had a little bit of a sell-off this week. Crypto bros are back. The money is flowing in. The AI exuberance is here. But the nice thing about Groq, Pat, is this isn't exuberance. It's a real company, real technology. It's foundational, and it's in a space that needs more competitors, chip makers. So that is where we are at, Pat. So let's jump to Apple. The headlines were all over. Shelves car product, develops humanoid robot product. Pat, look, this one's kind of a little bit of a fun topic. It's a little less, it's not as geeky as the Palantir stuff. It's not as technical as the Intel stuff. But, it is a big question mark. And Pat, the topic is almost like, what the heck is Apple doing? Okay. They're being sued by everyone on the planet. They're, it's a pile-on moment. They apparently, the Xiaomi's, we didn't talk about this on the pod, Pat, but we've seen Xiaomi come out with what looks to be a pretty nice car. Now, again, there's questions about its safety, but basically phone makers in China are like, we can do that. We're going to make a car. And basically now they've taken chips and an operating system and put wheels and electric motors around it. And they're creating a car that looks a heck of a lot like a Porsche Taycan, in my opinion. And they're selling them for like 30 grand US. Now, again, that's not fully loaded. And this is all speculation right now of how much this will be available. But the long story long is, what the heck is happening in Apple? Like, that they abandoned their plan after all these years. They've dissembled the team. I think they let, close to 1,000 people go that were part of the car project. And now the rumor is they're going to get into humanoid robots. Pat, I also shared something last night that Alibaba is going to get into delivering packages with rockets. This is a real thing. I mean, what a world we live in right now. Like, because getting your dog food next day isn't soon enough. So I need it delivered on a rocket. So, there's not a lot of details about this kind of home bot, but it's, we know that Amazon had a $1,600 Astro bot, and it can deliver snacks and patrol the home, keep security. But what I'm not really quite sure about is, like, is this even a real thing? Is this a rumor? I mean, they've got an advanced tabletop home device that uses robotics to move a display around. So that's a starting point. But the way they're kind of picturing this thing and they're showing this thing is it's like a Boston Dynamics robot that's going to be walking around your house. Is it going to be cooking you dinner, doing your chores? Can it take my puppy out, by the way? Because this puppy needs to go out like every 15 minutes. I don't know, Pat. I just think this is super interesting. And, a smart display on some sort of mobile that's going to roam around your house. Did the Astro get legs? I know our guy, Panos Panay, is over at Amazon now. And, I trust with his innovation, it's going to advance the devices business, Pat. But, let me just kind of flip the topic. They always say, talk about what you want to talk about rather than what you're being asked. This robot thing feels like a rumor to me. It almost feels like an April Fool's joke, but it came after April Fool's Day. And if they are going to develop a robot, the dancing robots Tesla's putting out and everyone else is putting out, are they really ditching the car? Are they ditching their plan? Are they going to continue to roll out overpriced headgear and humanoid robots and rolling machines around their house? What the heck is Apple doing? And by the way, this created a lot of interest and hype, but they're still saying this is probably a few years, if not several years away from actually being something we would see in anybody's home.
So, having presented to boards of directors and run various elements of corporate strategy for large companies in my past, I will tell you that in your strategic long-range plan, you're coming up with some big long-term bets in what you're going to invest in and what you're not for growth. And I think this is probably one thing on, in the slide deck of the potential 5 things that Apple could do. Now, strategically, they're a little hamstrung in that they're going to have a really hard time buying any company, right? We saw Amazon get shut down with Roomba, right? And then you have to look at core competencies. Now, Apple is very good at convincing consumers that it is safe. And if you think about a robot coming in and doing your laundry, being a roving security camera, delivering messages or food to your kids and stuff like that, trust is going to be paramount. And that's what I think Apple would be very, very good at. On the mechanical side, the company has demonstrated it is exceptionally well at miniaturization and things like smartphone and Apple Watch. But when it comes to motors, arms, rotating arms, the companies that have been doing that for 10 years are companies like Amazon, right? You have Amazon that's been doing this forever. I mean, they have, Dan, you and I went to one of their distribution centers. We saw those orange robots driving around on the ground. You've got robotic arms doing things. You have something called Proteus. And remember the containerized storage robots where the pick, pack, and shipper didn't walk around the warehouse. The tray came to you, to the picker. And then, of course, you mentioned Astro. And again, I don't know how that's doing commercially, but you also have the Ring Always Home flying camera that Amazon runs as well. So that is a company that I think has much bigger potential to pull this off. They would have to, and as much as we like to attack Amazon for we can't trust you because for this reason or that reason, they're actually one of the most trusted consumer brands behind Apple, which is interesting. And then there's Tesla that has Optimus that they're putting big investments in. And I don't believe any date that Elon puts out after his cross-country, full self-driving.
Only 5 years late. It's going to happen.
Yeah. But anyways, it's he's claiming that Optimus will go into his manufacturing facilities in the next 3 years. So anyways, I think there's a lot of pluses of why Apple could be good at this, but if they can't get really good at mechanical and wheels, at arms and things like that, and they're going to get shut down from buying maybe a mid-sized company, it's going to be very difficult. But what is crystal clear is Apple's growth potential is murky, right? You can find a way to do low-cost smartphones, but they've been flirting with SE forever. New iPads continue to get pushed back because, like the PC market, people don't feel like they have a reason. Maybe the AI tablet will be a big driver. Maybe the AI smartphone will be a driver. But net, it's super murky.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this was a little bit of fun, very speculative. It is interesting. Every company's kind of competing. And Pat, I wasn't kidding about the Baba thing. So everyone out there, check that out. They want to launch rockets to drop packages off.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, my research for this one that popped up.
Yeah, it was just again, we want to keep everybody on the front foot, as surprising and innovative as possible. It's good these companies are competing to disrupt. And Pat, you and I have been in those Amazon factories and watched the robotics work where they work for picking and packing and shipping. And I mean, there's some really interesting applications. I don't know, the humanoid robot thing. It's probably coming. It'll probably be driven by people buying their spouses in the future. It'll be the next version of the mail order spouse. My robot.
Lord.
I mean, not everybody has a bestie, that they want to hang out with all the time.
Are we getting married? Are we getting married anytime soon? I hope so.
Let's we haven't shown since Connor's wedding the potential when we put that on we put that little place setting on there. That, by the way, we're in the same shirt. Look at that. Look at us. Connor called that out in the chat. Look at that, Connor. All right, let's go to the next topic. There is an iPad. There's been very little IPO activity in enterprise software for some time. Rubrik, Bipul Shah, our friends over there, we're advisors over there. They filed an S1 to go public.
Yeah, they did, and it's pretty exciting. Like you said, it's a clear message that the IPO market is getting better. And one company coming out, doesn't make a trend, but we saw Reddit go out. Right, there's even rumors of Cerebras putting together potential filing soon. So I'm thinking we're back on that front. There's estimates that put the company at around $7 billion of value, and gross margins. The S1 showed that they look pretty good. I think it's 77% up from 70%. The base revenue, I know I was reading was a little bit of a concern. But, Dan, as we've seen, moving from kind of licenses to SaaS, there is a rocky process to go and drive ARR. So, there is no free cash flow, right? For 2023 was negative 15 billion. The company's not making money, which, by the way, it's been a while since I've seen a company come out and list when they had net income. So this is no different. No, I think the company is hitting at the right time too. When you look at all of the AI-related data investments, Dan, you and I both have came early to the conclusion that data management and part of that data protection and data security and resiliency is going to be a key part of any company's ability to put together a proper AI strategy. And that's the business that Rubrik is essentially in, which is to back that up, to protect that data. And when somebody does come in, nefarious folks come in and try to destroy the data, getting that data back and online very quickly. So congratulations to Bipple and the senior management team of the company.
Yeah, Pat, it's really interesting because there's not a ton to cover. I like that you called that out. I do not understand. I cannot for the life of me understand this kind of continued propensity to put companies out as public companies that don't make money. So that's my criticism. It's nothing against Rubrik. It's just the sort of standard that it's become. Like, Pat, you and I have had some interesting conversations about valuation over the years, and it's really hard. I do understand companies grow and they grow into it, and you need liquidity, and liquidity enables scale, and scale creates massive valuated companies, and that's how VCs get their returns. And I mean, that's what has to happen. And I mean, the growth there, the 47% year-on-year growth is impressive. You want to know what was more impressive to me, though, was the fact that in 1.5 seconds, Gemini Pro was able to create a Rubrik S1 analysis that had
You love that, man, don't you?
I do. I want to talk about that only because you did such a good job of covering it. I just wanted to talk about whether or not, the equities analyst, the junior analysts, the junior wood choppers over at the big banks that come up and spend weeks and weeks digging out data to figure out how to position an IPO or an investment to their community can do that. Now, I do want to call out the fact that I was publicly critical about the fact that I thought the recommendations that the system actually made were pretty amateur. So while it did come up with a pretty good SWOT, the recommendations are where I think the money is to be made. That's why companies that, trust people like you to advise them. They can do this background stuff. They can do the search. They can find the basics. But then what do you do? So the long story short, Pat, is I do believe this is a growing field, data protection. I do believe things like RAG will be beneficial from having the access to all the data. We heard what Cohesity is doing. We know that Rubrik's doing something similar. I think Bipple and his team made a really nice pivot on cybersecurity and not being over-focused on just the data protection part. I think cybersecurity will be maybe the second most important trend line behind AI, because as AI enables more, scale of data, it also creates a whole lot of threat across the market space. Pat, I think people are longing for enterprise software IPOs. I'm betting you this thing will be heavily oversubscribed. The value will come out a lot higher. And I like it a lot better than Reddit. If you want my market comparative to the most recent cool IPO, I like it a lot better than Reddit. I like this space. It'll be interesting, by the way, to watch the Rubrik and kind of this whole Cohesity Veritas comparison, because Rubrik's coming out, going public, getting big liquidity, trying to go fast to market. Cohesity and Veritas are going to get a little bit bigger, more density. And then my guess is the IPO will follow that. So that'll be something to watch somewhat critically, Pat. But yeah, I mean, look.
Yeah, isn't it crazy how much excitement there is in this part of the market? I mean, let's not forget about Commvault, Veeam, what Dell is doing in these spaces as well. It's super interesting. And I can't help but I do think that these are great standalone businesses, but I also think that companies like Dell seem like, acquiring a Rubrik or a Cohesity would make a whole lot of sense, right? I know Dell has things like backup and restore and some resiliency features, but what I don't think anybody's picked up on is the fact that all of this data from different data sources, literally, whether it's HRM, HCM, ERP, Outlook, right? It's all going into these solutions. And it's like, well, while the data's there, why don't we activate this using generative AI? And we saw, features from Cohesity and Rubrik to do that. Oh, and by the way, the data is already secure. Now, the usability of that data based on, security posture and who should have access to this. It's not an end-to-end data platform, but wow, Dan, imagine all the data is in there to begin with and query it. And I think it's kind of this Trojan horse. You combine that with RAG and, you've got something that's pretty big.
Absolutely. And by the way, I meant to mention this, and just since we're talking IPOs and you mentioned about Apple earlier making acquisitions, and you just mentioned something else about Dell making big acquisitions. Isn't it interesting, the whole Inflection AI deal? We're not going to dive into this right now, but just as a kind of a little mini sidebar, Pat, did we just see right under our nose a brand new structure for doing an acquisition that requires no regulatory approval? I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Anyways, I'm sure if that doesn't meet any scrutiny, we could see a whole lot more of we're just going to invest in all the people and then we'll license all the IP and we don't own anything. All right. So let's go to the last topic, Pat. We talked a little bit about the Tesla robots, but let's talk about Tesla vehicles. Couple things going on. This week was a big week because there was some delivery and production numbers that came out. The company produced some big numbers, but delivered well below expectations. Stock got hammered. Questions are coming. Is it the end of days for Tesla? Are people losing interest in EVs? By the way, everybody loves to hate Elon Musk. And I just want to point out, did he not share something? I think I shared it with you this week, and I wish I could dig it up. Okay. I really do wish I could dig it up quickly for you, but I can't. But I can remember what I shared with you. And it was something along the lines of Twitter having just like best numbers it's ever had. You're not going to make me go back and answer that, are you?
No. I just want to flash it up. It just came through and we stopped talking about that. I wanted to get
it's fairly different technology. I mean, you're talking an analytics platform versus a data protection platform. But there was a nice article. I'll put it in the show notes that our team actually put out about the Rubrik filing, and then we also were covered in the media quite a bit. So we'll put some links in the show notes for everybody out there. But so, anyways, there's kind of that. By the way, I just mentioned that X is having like all-time high engagement on the platform. Again, nobody's reporting this. Who would report it, right? It's like, but Pat, I got to tell you, I wake up, I have to check Twitter X. I probably look at it like 400 times a day. And I think every other app on my phone, it's like once, twice, maybe messages and email a little bit more. I love the platform. It's amazing for getting real-time information. I don't know where else you would go, but whether I'm checking F1, EPL scores, or I want to know what's going on in tech, nowhere better to go. Tesla, by the way, numbers are off. Demand is down. They had to lower prices to blow out a growing number of Model 3 and Y that hit the streets. There is something going on. And by the way, this isn't just Tesla. The whole sort of demand and this whole EVs are going to take over the world in the next few years seems to be somewhat stalling out. I've been watching on some of the Twitters and press about like Ford Mustang Mach-Es. These, a year ago, they were going at 10, 20K over list. Dealers are blowing these things out at 20K in some cases below list and offering finance rates that are lower than the 10-year right now yield to try to get people to buy these things. I think people are frustrated and struggling with infrastructure. I know we're seeing some charging infrastructure going into place, Pat, but if you have range anxiety and you actually drive anywhere far, but the long and the short question is Tesla, hitting peak? Has their growth stalled? I think it has stalled a little bit. But it also is interesting because, I mentioned the Xiaomi thing and the lower price and some of the interest coming around that. And Tesla is supposed to have a Model 2 coming, and they're also supposed to be doing robotic taxis. Two big initiatives going on at the same time. The Model 2 is supposed to come at a low price. And this, did you see? I don't know if you saw Reuters put out a note that basically got heavily shared and tweeted that Musk was scrapping his plans for the Model 2. Musk came out with a reply to one of them. I think it was the Zero Hedge tweet that basically said Reuters is lying again. So there's a big conflict going on. There's a war in the media. Musk is basically building probably one of the most viewed platforms on the planet for media and information. And then you got this kind of war with the broader press that are trying to constantly sort of challenge Musk and everything he does. Definitely not interested in seeing him being successful. But the numbers are also showing some consternation in the marketplace around EVs. Do we need a lower priced one, Pat? Do we need a Model 2 in the 20s? Is that even achievable? I feel like it cost me 20 grand to go to the grocery store right now and just get food for the house, let alone to buy a car. So if he can actually get a Model 2 that's going to be sub 30K, that'll be crazy. Having said that, I think winning the autonomy race is more important than coming out with a 20K, 25K Model 2 vehicle. And so I do think, and I could see maybe some prioritization right now on the Model 2. Flip that. Prioritization on the robotic taxi. He has made this FSD a big thing. He did talk this week about licensing self-drive to other vehicle makers. Very interesting. Could he be putting more focus there, slowing down on the production? He's now making right-hand vehicles. He's doing all kinds of things. I don't think they're in trouble. I think it's short-term. I think we're in a bit of a lull. I think I'm going to end where I started, Pat, and I'm going to pass it back to you. I think the numbers we get fed about where the economy is at versus where it's actually at are not the same. I don't think we're as strong as people want us to believe. I think there's a lot of revisions going on in the data. I think, people are a little bit more nervous. Interest rates are still high. They're not spending as fast. And that, of course, is going to impact the car industry. But I do think electrification isn't picking up quite as fast as people want for vehicles, at least people that want to see us go all electric in the near term.
I have two things to bring up. First thing are interest rates in new cars. The first thing is so the typical credit score in the United States is around 700.
It's pretty good.
Do you know what the interest rate for a car is if you have a 700?
8.5.
12.65% is the
Come
average
on.
as
Really?
of today. And you know what? If you're 699, it's 17.84%.
Yeah, we're in the wrong business, dude.
It is absolutely ridiculous. So that's one point. I do think that's weighing on Tesla in the United States. And in China, there's a whole heck of a lot of competition, and there is a freaking price war going on. And with all that capital expenditure that the company has made in China with a factory, they have to sell stuff out. So they're slinging mud, and they're in the mud with the Chinese manufacturers. The only way that Tesla gets out of that mess is first of all bleeding the competitors, but also robotic manufacturing, and that's where I think Optimus comes into play. And those people who are looking for EVs and not necessarily the self-driving capabilities, there is a lot of competition that's out there right now. Now the combination of EV plus the level of safety that Tesla brings to the table is unparalleled. There's a full self-driving capability that's out there in beta, but it's not even necessarily, it's not approved, and multiple people aren't looking at that right now. So lots of things going on. I think there's a lot of Elon, we hate Elon out there, as you said in the run up, but more competition, interest rates sucks. Tesla needs to come out with their next hurrah, and I think you mentioned two, which is robotaxi plus this Model 2, which we manufacture here in our awesome Austin, Texas. If I were on my other porch on the other side, you might even be able to get a glimpse of
And
the.
everybody, that's not a fake background. That's the way Pat lives. I just want you to
Oh,
see that.
come on now, Dusty. Yeah.
Good looking background, man. That's a dream for me and most Tesla Model 3 owners. By the way, the model the Model 3, they did also offer huge discounts, but you do realize, like, so I'm a bit of a car guy, everybody. So if you get 0% interest, Pat, it's $16.67 per thousand on a 5-year note. So I mean, if you buy a $30,000 car, it's like 500 something bucks a month, or something like around 500 bucks. At 16% on a $30,000 car, you've added, right? Like,
right. You saw the meme of that lady talking about her $3,000 a month monthly bill for her car.
Dude, you're adding almost $6,000 a year of interest.
No, I mean, think
you're
about
$500 a month with another $500 a month of interest. So you just doubled the payment for the same vehicle. And people are going, oh, what? Okay, inflation's a problem, people, and interest rates of 16% to buy a freaking car.
And we go back where food was priced 5 years ago. There's not a single measurement that says we aren't up 25%. And you think of the typical American family trying to pay for food. We've seen that energy in California, electricity is up, 50%. I mean,
so how are we getting 3%?
What's that?
Where's the 3% number come from?
Well, it's a joke. That's year over year. But what that doesn't bring into account that real wages are stagnant. If real wages are stagnant and inflation went up 1 year 12%, then 7%, and then 3%, you can stack all of those increases and look back. And that's very frustrating for me. And I feel like, I'm not in this elitist type of thing, but it's such an elitist type of point of view to forget about the increases over the last 5 years. That's what's devastating to Americans. And people are like, gosh, inflation is tame. And why do people still think the economy sucks? They can't afford cars. Food is expensive. Electricity and gas are still more expensive. Actually, I need to go back and look at gas. Electricity is in certain states. And my gosh, there are certain insurers in California who are pulling out, saying that properties are uninsurable. And what happens when competition pulls out of anything? Average insurance rates for homes are going up. So
I got an idea. If we just raise rates on just the really rich people, we can solve everything.
That solves everything, dude.
Everything.
France increased its taxes on the super wealthy people, and guess what they did? They freaking left the country.
I know. And by the way, I realize there's a little bit of additional Saturday sarcasm and sardonic sort of coverage here from Pat and I. But I think when I'm just reading, like I said, too much doom scrolling, my friend. But I mean, you did see, like, I'm starting to see the list populate in California of all the fast food, that how many jobs are being cut.
Yeah.
You can't, like, so now we're going to have either the choices that have been created are $6 cheeseburgers from McDonald's or $20 weight. Like, these companies can't function. So we're creating like that. And by the way, that extra couple bucks that you've given does not enable them to afford the $6 burgers. You don't create enough wage growth to create the ability to buy stuff. We're going to end up like looking like Argentina if we keep this up. I know that's depressing. Let's end on a good note. You and I are heading off tomorrow. We're going to head to Intel Vision. We're going to be talking, we're going to get the Intel's vision, which we talked quite a bit about at the beginning of this, at the head of the show. We're going to hear more about it. We're going to be sharing more. We're going to be sitting down with a number of leaders while we're there. And some of it will be out there for you on the 6-5. And then, Pat, we're heading to Google Cloud Next in Las Vegas. By the way, left San Francisco. I don't know why they would have done that, but
I think they said it had nothing to do with the crime and everything to do with
they needed a bigger venue. They need a bigger venue.
Because Salesforce's conference, Dreamforce, is so small. you know?
Well, what do we know? What do we know, Pat? We're just tech guys. We're not economists. We're not politicians. We're just speculating here and there, having a little fun. Don't fall out the window. All right, buddy. Great show. A lot of fun this Saturday morning. Tomorrow morning, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez will line up on the front row at the grid
Tonight.
in Japan.
Tonight.
Oh, it's tonight here. Guess who's right behind him, Pat?
Who?
Lando Norris, number 3.
Lando,
Come on,
baby.
McLaren. Let's go, Arsenal. Let's go 6-5. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See, when it's my show, I get to do shout-outs to all of my important teams. Pat, you go enjoy breakfast. Don't go do some nuclear fusion crap. Let's just have some fun. Let's talk tech. Let's stick around. All you out there, we appreciate you being part of the 6-5 community, but we got to go. We'll see y'all later.